the unsinkable ship that sank, a century of questions. The night was cold, the sea calm. Aboard the RMS Titanic, the largest ship ever built, excitement filled the air. It was 1912, and this Leviathan was making its maiden voyage, a symbol of progress and human ingenuity. They called her unsinkable. But in the icy depths of the North Atlantic, fate had other plans. The story of the Titanic is a tale woven into the fabric of history, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the hubris of man. We think we know the story: a collision with an iceberg, a catastrophic sinking, over 1,500 souls lost. But what if the truth is more complex? What if the Titanic's demise was not simply a tragic accident? What if darker forces were at play? This is not a story of mere ice and steel. It is a journey into the heart of a mystery, a quest to unravel the truth behind the Titanic's final moments. It is a story of human error, of courage and cowardice, of technological marvels and their fatal flaws, and it is a story that, even after a century, continues to captivate and haunt us. Steel and ice. Was the Titanic's armor flawed? This question has intrigued historians and engineers alike for over a century. The Titanic was a marvel of engineering, a testament to the power of steel and rivets. Built in the early 20th century, she was the largest and most luxurious ship of her time, a floating palace that promised safety and comfort. She was built to withstand the harshest conditions the North Atlantic could throw at her, including the ever-present danger of icebergs. The ship's designers believed they had accounted for every possible threat. Her hull was double-bottomed and divided into 16 watertight compartments. This design was intended to make her virtually unsinkable. Even if several of these compartments flooded, she was designed to stay afloat. The ship's builders were confident in their creation, believing it to be the pinnacle of maritime safety. But whispers of doubt have always surrounded the Titanic's construction. From the very beginning, there were those who questioned whether the ship was truly as invincible as claimed. Some experts believe that the steel used in her hull was of inferior quality, brittle in the extreme cold of the North Atlantic. This brittleness, they argue, could have made the ship more susceptible to damage upon impact with an iceberg. This brittleness, they argue, could have made the ship more susceptible to damage upon impact with an iceberg. The frigid waters of the North Atlantic could have turned the steel into a fragile shell, unable to withstand the force of a collision. Others point to the rivets, the metal pins holding the hull plates together. They claim that the rivets, too, were substandard, prone to snapping under pressure. If the rivets failed, the hull plates could have easily separated, leading to catastrophic flooding. They claim that the rivets, too, were substandard, prone to snapping under pressure. This theory suggests that the very elements meant to hold the ship together may have contributed to its downfall. If the steel was brittle and the rivets weak, the Titanic's seemingly impenetrable armor might have been fatally flawed from the start. These potential weaknesses could have turned a minor collision into a disaster of epic proportions. The question of the Titanic's structural integrity is a complex one, with evidence supporting both sides of the argument. Some believe that the ship was a victim of unfortunate circumstances, while others argue that hidden flaws sealed her fate. But the possibility of faulty materials, of a ship built with hidden weaknesses, adds a chilling layer to the already tragic tale. As we continue to explore the wreck and study the evidence, the mystery of the Titanic's armor remains a poignant reminder of the limits of human engineering. The burning belly of the beast. Fire in the coal holds. This was a hidden menace, lurking deep within the ship's structure, a threat that was both silent and deadly. Deep within the bowels of the Titanic, in the cavernous coal holds, a fire raged. The coal, piled high and packed tightly, created the perfect conditions for a fire to start and spread unnoticed. This was not an unusual occurrence on coal-powered ships of the time. Ships of that era often faced the peril of coal fires, a hazard that came with the territory of using coal as a primary fuel source. Spontaneous combustion was a constant risk. The coal, under pressure and heat, could ignite without warning, creating a dangerous situation for any vessel. But the fire on the Titanic, it seems, was different. It was not just a fleeting blaze, but a persistent inferno that had been burning for an extended period. It had been smoldering for days, perhaps even weeks, before the ship left Southampton. The crew was aware of the fire, but the decision was made to continue with the voyage, hoping to manage the situation as they sailed. Evidence suggests that the fire was located near one of the ship's bunkers, where coal was stored. This area was critical to the ship's operation, and the fire posed a significant threat to its structural integrity. The intense heat, reaching temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, could have weakened the steel hull in that area. The prolonged exposure to such high temperatures would have compromised the metal, making it more susceptible to damage. This weakening, coupled with the potential brittleness of the steel in the cold water, could have made the ship's side dangerously vulnerable. The icy waters of the North Atlantic would have exacerbated the brittleness, creating a perfect storm of conditions for disaster. Some believe that the fire was a closely guarded secret, that the White Star Line, the Titanic's owners, was desperate to keep it under wraps. The company had invested heavily in the Titanic, and any hint of a problem could have been disastrous for their reputation and financial standing. They argue that the fire was a major factor in the sinking, that the weakened hull could not withstand the impact of the iceberg. When the Titanic struck the iceberg, the compromised steel gave way more easily, leading to the catastrophic flooding that ultimately sank the ship. The coal bunker fire remains one of the most intriguing aspects of the Titanic disaster. It adds a layer of complexity to the tragedy, suggesting that the ship's fate was sealed not just by the iceberg, but by a combination of factors, including the fire. It is a reminder that even the most sophisticated machines are not immune to the dangers of fire, and that the consequences of ignoring such dangers can be catastrophic. The Titanic's story is a testament to the importance of vigilance and the need to address potential hazards before they lead to disaster. A sea of empty seats, the deadly lack of lifeboats. The Titanic, a marvel of modern engineering, was tragically underprepared for the disaster that awaited it. The lifeboats, which should have been a symbol of safety, instead became a symbol of the ship's fatal shortcomings. The most heart-wrenching aspect of the Titanic disaster is the sheer number of lives lost. Families were torn apart, and communities were left in mourning. The scale of the tragedy is almost unimaginable, with over 1,500 men, women, and children perishing in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. Over 1,500 men, women, and children perished in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. The survivors, huddled in the lifeboats, could only watch in horror as the great ship sank beneath the waves, taking so many souls with it. And, a significant contributing factor to this tragedy was the woefully inadequate number of lifeboats on board. The panic and chaos that ensued as passengers realized there were not enough lifeboats for everyone only added to the horror of that fateful night. The Titanic was equipped with 20 lifeboats, enough for only about half of the people on board. This meant that even if the lifeboats had been filled to capacity, many would still have been left behind. The lifeboats themselves were a mix of wooden and collapsible types, but their number was woefully insufficient. This was not illegal at the time. Maritime laws and safety regulations were outdated and did not account for the sheer number of passengers and crew on such a large vessel. The regulations were based on the tonnage of the ship, not the number of people it carried, a glaring oversight that proved catastrophic. Regulations governing the number of lifeboats required on passenger ships were outdated and based on the tonnage of the ship, not the number of passengers and crew. This meant that the Titanic, despite its size and capacity, was not required to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board. The decision to sail with so few lifeboats was a fatal miscalculation, driven by a combination of factors. The White Star Line, the company that owned the Titanic, made decisions based on aesthetics, cost, and a misplaced confidence in the ship's invincibility. Some argue that the White Star Line prioritized aesthetics over safety, believing that too many lifeboats would clutter the deck and detract from the ship's grandeur. The ship's designers and owners wanted to maintain the Titanic's luxurious appearance, even at the expense of passenger safety. Others point to the prevailing attitude of the time, that the Titanic was practically unsinkable, and that the lifeboats were merely a formality. This overconfidence in the ship's design and construction led to a dangerous complacency, with disastrous consequences. Whatever the reasons, the lack of lifeboats on the Titanic stands as a stark reminder of the importance of safety regulations and the human cost of complacency. The tragedy of the Titanic serves as a powerful lesson in the need for rigorous safety standards and the dangers of overconfidence. It is a somber reminder that even the most advanced technology cannot replace the need for basic safety measures. A silent witness. The SS Californian's enigma. As the Titanic was sinking, sending out desperate distress signals, another ship, the SS Californian, was nearby. The Californian was a British Leyland Line steamer on her way from London to Boston. She had stopped for the night, her captain and crew unaware of the drama unfolding just a few miles away. The Californian's role in the Titanic disaster has been the subject of much debate and controversy. Some witnesses on the Titanic claim to have seen the Californian's lights on the horizon, tantalizingly close. They also claim to have seen the Californian's rockets, signaling her presence. Why then did the Californian not respond to the Titanic's distress signals? The answer remains elusive. Some believe that the Californian's crew, asleep in their bunks, simply did not see the signals. Others suggest that the Californian's captain, Stanley Lord, aware of the ice in the area, chose to ignore the signals out of fear for his own ship. The SS Californian remains a silent witness to the Titanic's final hours, her role in the tragedy shrouded in mystery. Her presence, so close yet seemingly so far, adds another layer of complexity to the already heartbreaking story.